Good evening, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be here and to welcome His Excellency Margus Tsahkna, Foreign Minister of Estonia, to Canberra and to ASPI. I'm the head of ASPI, Justin Bassi. I can see a number of dignitaries, ambassadors in the room as well. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to have you here in ASPI as always. And it marks, in my view, a historic occasion. Australia and Estonia established diplomatic relations in 1991. And in more than 3 decades since, the relationship has been very friendly, but perhaps quiet. That is all now changing. It's getting even friendlier and perhaps a fair bit louder. Minister Tsahkna is the first Estonian foreign minister to make an official visit to Australia. And he arrives at a moment when the threat of authoritarian aggression is rising, when conflict in Europe and the Middle East has rendered the international environment deeply unstable, and the balance of power has shifted, most concerningly through the 2022 self-declared Sino-Russian no-limits partnership. And it is that authoritarian partnership, or axis, that has collapsed the previously held notion that threats to Europe are separate to threats to the Indo-Pacific. Russia's war on Ukraine is not just European, but impacts us here. And key Asian nations, most notably China and North Korea, are supporting Russia's war effort directly, with North Korean troops who return home being battle-hardened. That said, Iran has discovered that cooperation among autocrats with a common interest in upheaval is a long way short of the loyalty common to true friends. It all means that while this visit is indeed a diplomatic milestone, it is a practical reflection of the urgency with which countries like Australia and Estonia need to deepen ties with those who share the same values and interests. And I use the word values deliberately. A values-based foreign policy has lost a bit of favour over the last decade. But aligning ourselves around interests alone will only give Russia and China a stronger chance to dominate the rest of us. Principles of territorial sovereignty, freedom of speech, movement, navigation, and freedom from foreign interference all remain fundamental values as well as being in our interest. And Estonia, a tiny Baltic state with a population of around 1.3 million, is a prime example of a nation which maintains and enforces its principles. Almost 2 decades ago, Russia's 22-day cyber assault in 2007 made Estonia a target, and Estonia's response was to become a global leader in cybersecurity. Estonia already spends about 5% of its GDP on actual military capability, well ahead of the new NATO target. And it has been one of Ukraine's most consistent and vocal champions since Russia's illegal invasion. In many ways, Estonia is less a small, faraway country and more a working model worthy of study, particularly for a country like Australia, in a region where the rules that have kept the region stable for decades are being tested daily, where China's military expansion in the South China Sea, the militarisation of disputed territories, and increasing grey zone activity targeting our critical infrastructure are no longer distant concerns, but present realities. What Estonia has experienced and learned is directly relevant for us. All of this is within the context of both Estonia and Australia needing to work with a changed America, one that remains our respective most important security ally. We'll shortly hear from Minister Tsahkna about his visit, why he's here, no doubt talking cyber and critical minerals, diplomacy and defence, and why getting the partnership with Australia right matters for both countries. We'll then have a quick fireside conversation and then open to you guys in the audience for questions. So as you're listening to the Minister, start thinking about what you might like to ask. With that, once again, Minister, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, and the podium is yours.
Thank you very much, and it is a great honor for me to be here today and also to see so many people who are deciding about foreign policy in Australia, but also many good friends and also neighbors as Latvia, Lithuania. Meeting you in Australia is a great pleasure, really. It seems as well that the world is very much connected, and as it was told, it's about values. And I think that in Europe, many people were thinking like maybe 20 years ago or 15 years ago that values are something abstract, but for us, values are actually, and principles are very practical in today's world. And this is something which is connecting us as a small country in Europe and North Europe to Australia. And also, it took 10 years for Estonian Foreign Minister to come back here, because the last visit was 2016. I don't know why it happened like this, but I'm really happy to be here. And also, historically, Estonians, we have a pretty large community here in Australia, mainly, of course, because of the Second World War, because we were left out from this Yalta deal, and we were still occupied together with the Baltic states 50 years, and we lost every fifth of our people during this occupation. But many of us, they were forced to leave the country, and because of the Australian immigration policy at the time, but as well because people felt more safe not in Europe, they came to Australia. And actually, I'm just for the beginning. Afterwards, we will have a more deep talks about the foreign policy and security policy. But for me, it was a very emotional meeting yesterday with our community when I was handed over the Estonian flag, which was risen on top of our president's residence in 1944, 21st of September. It was a time when the Nazi troops, they were withdrawing, and the Soviet troops came in. And it was just a couple of days gap when we tried to reestablish our independence and declare that we are a free country again. We did exactly the same thing in 1918 during the First World War, when the Germans left and the Russians started to come in. So we declared our independence in 24th February 1918, exactly the same day. Now every year, we already fourth year, we celebrate, unfortunately, the full scale of aggression starting against Ukraine. But then we had the independence war, and 1920, we were finishing that with the Tartu Peace Treaty. Tartu is one city in Estonia, and it was the birth certification for Estonian Republic. And so exactly 1944, in December, we had the same action ongoing, but it was not meant to fulfill. So the Russian troops came in, and two young boys, 15 years old, they took the flag. And then we didn't know anything what happened with this flag. Actually, they separated it in two pieces. And this one boy wrapped this flag around his body, and then they escaped with the family to Germany, and then finally happened to be in Australia. And in 2021, this old man died here. He didn't tell anything about this, anybody. And then just last year, the relatives, they found the flag. And now I was handed it over to me, and I will bring it back to Estonia. It's not about flag, it's about our story. And unfortunately, lots of these kind of stories in the world, what we see. But these symbolic acts are actually showing our people's spirit. These traditions and symbols actually carrying the same spirit as Ukrainians now having, fighting for their own freedom, but also winning time for us, in Europe at least, to be prepared. Because unfortunately, we see more power in the world. It's not only about Russia, it's about a question about the international order, United Nations Charter, principles. And I definitely support the Canadian Prime Minister's ideas that maybe now it's a time for small and medium countries to stand up as well, to work together, stand together, the same principles, and bring these principles, which are actually guaranteeing our independence and freedom globally, to the new age, I can say. Because international law is changing, unfortunately. We cannot be in a protective position and think to the past, because the world will never be the same again. But we must be sure that we are not just standing there, but we need to act. And this is exactly the one reason why I'm here, far away from my country, far away from Europe to Australia, because Australia is sharing the same values and as well following the principles with actions about supporting Ukraine. We definitely understand the same security threats what we have in Europe, you have here, as well. Their practicalities, nobody knows in the world, and most Estonians, they don't know as well, that actually Estonia is producing the largest amount of rare earth metals and magnets outside from China. So this is something which is connecting us as well with Australia very practically. And Estonia is a leading so-called center and hub in Europe about this matter, which is existential for us globally as a free world. So we have lots of different reasons to be here, but I really would like to open all these topics together with this conversation, and I really do appreciate if you have any questions. You can ask whatever you want, so there's no secrets. So thank you again for this opportunity. Even we are far away from each other, we have many, many common things, and also, I think not only principles, but the way how we live our lives is something that we need to understand that it's not granted. Really, we know that living in a very bad neighborhood, but you should know that as well, that even keeping the lifestyle what we have, enjoying this freedom, it needs heavy work every day. So thank you again for this opportunity. Thank
you. Thanks, Minister, and thanks for sharing that story. I think most people, if not everyone in the room, would agree that freedom does take work. Unfortunately, it's not free. But a number of things you said in that opening, I think, would resonate, including that you didn't simply say that international rules or laws are dead or no longer exist, but they're changing. So countries like Australia and Estonia need to work together to ensure they don't change in ways that are harmful to us. Conscious that we are going to have a conversation about what is happening in Europe and why it's impacting not just Europe but the rest of the world. But might just okay with you start with a question on the Iran war. It's obviously grabbing all the headlines. We do need to make sure that it doesn't result in us deprioritizing other issues like Ukraine. But before we get into Russia and Europe, can you tell us what lessons you are seeing at the moment, at least initially, from Iran and what's happening in the Middle East? For example, do you think that it makes Estonia safer, less safe? Do you think it's too early to tell? Do you think it's identifying and in quite an alarming way the scope and scale of weaponry that authoritarian regimes from Russia to Iran have stockpiled over the last couple of decades? Are there lessons that we can take already from it?
Yeah, of course, Middle East is very complicated. You know it very well, but the Iranian regime has been there already like 47 years or 48 years, so there's nothing new. And one my eyes is laughing and the other eye is crying, in the meaning that, of course, the situation right now when we see that Israel is per purpose using the full-scale military capabilities to weaken the regime or even take it down. But the main question is, what is the goal for US actually this time? Okay, nuclear program, everybody is concerned. We have put more sanctions. We have been more deeply concerned all the years, but actually Iran continued. So I can say that we are definitely supporting these kind of actions. Practically, I mean, that nobody is interested about Iran regime with the nuclear weapon. So that's clear for everybody, I think, in Australia as well. So as well, the threat military and as a terror organization for the security in the region, but that's as well to Europe is something that we are happy that these capabilities will be taken down, or already, I think that has been taken down. There's some reports says that close to 80% of military capabilities they have destroyed. I don't know whether it's true or not. It's hard to get the solid information. And so these are the positive trends, I can say. As well, Iran has been one of the major supporter to Russia on military level, as well politically, about this aggression against Ukraine. And it is directly a threat to us as well in Europe as a neighboring country for Russia. So our people are very happy and no one is actually supporting this Iranian regime. So it is clear. And we have been advocating as well already years that this Islamic Guard, Revolutionary Guard, will be named as a terroristic organization. And finally, European Union did it just before. Now the action started. So it is pretty clear. As well, that I think that Putin is losing its like authority or this kind of strong position as a head or as a godfather of the mob or the mafia in the world, when all the dictators are their best friends and he's delivering the protection in the meaning. We have witnessed during the last years, Al-Assad in Syria. We see that Venezuela, a dictator, is imprisoned somewhere in, I don't know, New York or somewhere. So now the Iranian leadership is, I don't know where, in the hell maybe or whatever. And Russia is not able to do anything, really. And even the latest public announcements. And now Russia finally found the international law and the United Nations Charter and so on, but nobody actually taking it very seriously. They are not, and Putin is not able to protect these dictatorships and the best friends. We have left who, actually? North Korea. So that's the good part. But of course, the bad part is that this conflict is escalating there. And I just before here, we were finishing our evacuation action plan from Estonia. We brought out everybody who wanted as an Estonian citizens, but it was an easy part. But we see as well how vulnerable is actually the global trade and also all this energy sector. So we all pay already much more. I don't know the prices in Australia, but in Estonia, prices went up within the first day when it started. So and Iran has an impact. And also if you see what Iran is doing as a regime, he's hitting everybody. Even these neighbors who normally used to be, I don't know, friendly or neutral or mediating these kind of talks. So nobody is safe. So we can see that as well. So I think that there is nobody who is interested about long-term escalation and war in the region. But we don't know actually what are the real goals for President Trump. But as well, we have witnessed, I think, pretty often that US foreign policy is guided as well what is happening domestically. So the midterm elections are coming. And if the oil prices will increase or will stand so high, so it's a huge argument against President Trump's domestic policy, because he has promised as well lower prices as Biden had. And now it's hard to explain whatever measures actually US can take about securing the low prices. It doesn't work for a long run. So we don't know exactly what is going to happen. So that's why as well we are not very much interested about this long-scale escalation period there. And this is my personal opinion. I don't believe that actually this regime will be changed, because it's really hard for these Iranian people who want to have a change. They have no organization, they have no nothing. We know that there's more than 1 million persons connected to this regime which are existentially interested about continuing, because this is their life. They're not going to retirement from this regime, so they're fighting for their life. And of course, Iranian people, they're suffering a lot, really, more than ever. We witnessed as well all the information we could get out from Iran during the last half a year after the first bombing. So it was really crazy what this regime did against their own people. So it's bad world, some good things strategically, but of course, diplomatic solution must be done, but I'm not sure when.
Thank you. A very open answer. I think it is both the blessing and burden of democracy that no matter how powerful President Trump may seem, he answers to the American people and needs to necessarily care about the welfare of the American people in the way that the Iran regime, the Russian regime just don't have to. They are content with having their people suffer as long as they remain in power. Sticking with the analysis or the lessons, what is I think, an extraordinary fact is that now Russian aggression against Ukraine has lasted longer than Russia's time in World War II. It, I think, shows the extent to which what we have seen both from Russia, but also the absolute resilience from Ukraine and all of Ukraine's supporters. What lessons have you or Europe drawn from this, and how long can the current model of support for Ukraine be sustained?
Yes, thank you for bringing out the fact that actually Ukraine was and has been able to fight a longer period that actually the Second World War for Russia took place. And I'm not going to explain you what is happening because you all know, because you're experts. But I just give you some points how we see it. The first thing is that Estonia has been in very clear positions already, I think, 2 decades, that Russia is an aggressive country. And we were not taken seriously, unfortunately, in Europe at least. But I think the western part of the world as well didn't take it seriously. And we saw Putin published its plan already 2007 during the Munich Security Conference, if you remember. And he said very clearly that the main goal and main reason for him to act is actually to eliminate the root causes. And the root causes was the collapse of the Soviet Union. And I was always wondering, all these Putinologists who wanted to figure out what is the plan for Putin. But actually it was public. It was published actually most of the web pages in the world about the foreign policy. And nobody took it seriously. So, and he started to act as well. And Georgia started 2008, and 20% of Georgian territory is still occupied. Georgia was very close to come into the NATO at the time and also started this EU path. And it was really something that Europe lost, and NATO as well, because we hesitated, we didn't give the map, if you remember, and the next month Russia went in. And it's there. So 2014, Ukraine started. And actually we didn't do anything of that. We were more concerned, and Crimea was gone, and part of the eastern Ukraine as well, but we were sure that, and Ukrainians as well were sure that it will be continued, because it was a plan. So this kind of misunderstanding from our side, I mean, the western part of the world, was a huge mistake. Even more, what we learned is that if you're trying to control Russia by economical measures, I mean, energy and some other investments, it was exactly Angela Merkel's and European leaders' policy, then you actually, this is a totally wrong way, and Putin will be misused. And it really happened. So this is exactly what we need to understand now. Putin is not negotiating. Putin is pushing the lines, red lines. If you're making the compromise, it will be the new point for the further steps. So it's something what we understood. And for now, the principle that we cannot have neutrality countries or so-called the gray zones between European Union, NATO, and Russia, because this is a green light for Russia for further escalation and further aggression, and it will be as well. Now we need to understand that Ukraine is winning time for us as Europe, really. And we don't need only to support Ukraine. I'm not meaning only military and the finance and the political support, but we need to understand that if we want to have the peaceful, long peace in Europe, we must bring Ukraine in. We must get rid of this neutrality policy. And as well, we are not only offering Ukraine security guarantees for the future, but in our region, Ukraine is actually delivering us security guarantees, because Ukraine is the largest military power, which is united against Russia, because Russia has committed so much crazy atrocities against these brother nations, Slavic nations, both of them. So we must be sure that in our interest is to bring in Ukraine to NATO, bring in Ukraine to European Union, not only because of the military capabilities, but as well as a commitment for freedom. So this is something. And the last, I think, the even most important lesson I think we need to take is that if we are hesitating to keep the red lines with Russia, if we are not giving the straight and very clear messages, and if we are not talking the same language as Putin is using every day, then there can be a miscalculation. And exactly 22, that was a huge miscalculation from Putin's side. He was calculating in that actually the Western part is not doing anything, and I think he would have been right, sorry to say that, if Ukrainians couldn't fight from the first second, and very, very successfully within the first couple of weeks. It was one thing. The second was that actually he was miscalculating that actually he can take over Ukraine within a couple of days, the special operation, as he called it. So it was a huge mistake, and he couldn't stop it anymore. And now he's waging the fourth year of war, and it's already totally different. So our message as a bordering country, which is not, we don't want to have a war with Russia. We have had many claims, that you crazy Estonians or Latvians or Lithuanians, you want to have a war with Russia, and you're always saying straightforward out what we are doing, what we are not doing, that we need to invest heavily more to our defense and so on. But this is exactly the language that Putin wants to hear, in the meaning of getting a very clear picture, where is the red line? And is this red line is backed up with a real force as NATO or unity or the military capabilities. This is the best assurance and deterrence that Putin is not going to prolong his aggression against Europe. So we need to understand that Putin is playing with our fears on the western part of the world. Fear of escalation, the nuclear weapon, and so on. So we cannot be, we cannot have this fear, because then we are weak. So these are the lessons. Sorry, too long, but this is a way of thinking what we have.
Yeah, no, definitely not too long. I think it was an excellent explanation of exactly what the problems are. You mentioned a number of important issues there that too often we don't follow through on our red lines, and that can often then lead to miscalculation by the aggressive party, thinking that they have the freedom to do whatever they like, as you say. We saw it in 2022. The fear of escalation, I think we've seen it too often publicly showing the likes of Putin after Russian aggression, a fear that Western countries have of responding, for fear that is going to escalate. It all incentivizes just more aggression. Also, you're setting out that for since 2007, at least, Putin has been telling the world publicly what they're going to do. I think it's the same in this region for China. They publicly issued, for example, in 2015, their 2025 strategy by 2025 to become the tech superpower of the world. Mm-hmm. It's almost Bond-like or Austin Powers-like, where the bad guys are telling us what they're going to do. We've got to actually listen and be able to respond accordingly. Australia's Secretary of Defence Minister, who is soon to become our ambassador in Washington, DC, Greg Moriarty, told our Senate earlier this year that without China, Russia would not be where it is today with its war on Ukraine. Has the No Limits partnership that I think now most people would acknowledge has been there for a long time, and then finally publicly self-declared in 2022 between China and Russia, has that affected how European countries see both nations? And do you think that public description of themselves as having a no limits friendship, has that seen the need for European countries and Indo-Pacific countries like Australia and Japan to get even closer?
Yes, I totally agree with this analysis, or actually this is the fact that China is the main enabler for Russia to wage the war, and not only economically, as well technologically. And I say it very freely. I was last November in China, and I had a very long meeting with my counterpart, the foreign minister, and I told exactly the same things to him into the face. And I said that if you want to have a really good relations and trustful relations with Europe, Estonia is a small nation, 1.3 million people. We decided already 2016-17 that we are not invest any kind of technologies which is like strategic or sensitive. So we have no direct influence from China in the meaning of investments and so on. We are free from that. And we can exactly say what we are thinking about the things. So, and I said as well that if China really would like to have trustful relation with Europe, China should and must understand that Russia is an existential threat for Europe. It's not anymore the theoretical one. And if you would like to have a partner, then you need to understand their concerns. And if some concerns are existential, we mean as well existential. So, and this is something which is making our relations more complicated, I think, as well. But of course, China is a huge economical power. taking Europe country by country. I think that European economy as well, the Australian economy and many other countries in the world, they are depending on China. So this is reality. So, but we need to say it very clearly to Chinese authorities as well, that this is existential threat for us. So China has a 1,000-year plan, or this is clear. And Russia is keeping Europe and the western part of the world busy. This is something I think is good for China. China, of course, says officially that they are not part of this war. This is not their war. This is a private sector who is supporting. This is free market economy, you know, as it is. So, but we know that it takes only one phone call from Xi to Putin to stop the war, because China is owning day by day more and more Russia, economically, and it means as well politically. So this is clear. And of course, your question, because China has their own ambitions about this region. And as well, China has been really, really effective about the soft power, about investments. We are talking about Central Latin America, Africa. We're talking about Europe, actually. So this is something we need to understand, that China is a really, really strong power. Of course, we need to work together, and also we need to survive. And that's how as well, my meeting with my counterpart last November happened just a week after President Trump and Xi met. And it was really interesting meeting because about the rare earth metals and magnets restrictions, the export restrictions. And the foreign minister said to me, if I asked the question, that yes, we prepared for this momentum like 20 years. And now if whoever is threatening us with a trade war, we are going to use this tool. And as we understand, we cannot do anything right now. We are depending, all of us, the western part of the world and you as well, about this. And that's why, you know, somehow Estonia popped up, and we're now in the middle of everything, because we produce actually the largest scale rare earth metals and magnets in Estonia. We have this historical knowledge about that, but also Australia is connected to that, because this company now is partly owned by the Australian capital, Canada capital, and also US. So, and we are the hub of European Union for that, and this is a collaboration. But as well the security policy, of course. As a NATO, we are deeply concerned what is happening here, this region. As well, US is pushing Europe to be more stronger, more independent. We like it, because Europe, sorry to say, has been like an old, fat, lazy cat about the defense investments during the last more than 20 years. Really believe that the end of history times are there. Now we need to invest more heavily. I think that Putin, unfortunately, didn't wake up Europe. It was President Trump being very clear about the message that this relation will be strong, but not unconditional anymore. It is conditional. And also US attention is here in this region about China, Taiwan, and so on. So I think that this collaboration is really, really important, and we definitely understand that all these threats are connected to each other.
Very good. And I think it's fair to say countries in this region like Australia and Japan no longer see any separation, and we see any Russian success in Europe as being harmful for us, and very much support US staying in Europe, notwithstanding our view that China is definitely the pacing threat. I'm going to very soon go to the audience, give the audience as much time as possible. No doubt a number of questions, so get them ready, and there'll be a couple of roving mics. Just before I do, you've referenced red lines a few times, Minister. Mind gauging your view on whether we are at risk of setting red lines at military confrontation, and what your view is as to how we deal with red lines short of war. Russia in particular, but its authoritarian partners have an ability to carry out military conflict at the same time as also carrying out sabotage and foreign interference and cyber throughout the globe. How do you see democratic countries getting together to deter not just military conflict, but that type of hybrid activity as well?
Yeah, this is one of the most important questions you asked. That we know exactly what to do if the military aggression is starting. So we have a concept, and and capabilities and well-trained militaries. So we know that. But the reality is that the war is not as a war movie. People used to, order from Netflix, and it is starting with orchestra somewhere, Moscow and St. Petersburg train station, and then the troops going in, and everybody is happy, and then finally 1.5 hours, and then will be the victory and the losers and heroes. It's not like this. The war is already on, and we witnessed that in Europe. It's not about Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. It's about Europe, that we have these hybrid attacks, cyber attacks, special operations. Russia tactics, I'm not talking about Russia, but you mentioned many other aggressive regimes. They're doing exactly the same thing with our societies, actually. They are boiling us as a frog, turning on the heat by degree and degree. And we always in protection, protective position, trying to, get rid of that, not talking about that. But actually, this is dividing our societies. This is dividing our unity as well. And it's not only about, narrative that Russia is good and Ukraine is bad and Russia will be aggressive. This is much more smarter about dividing our societies. You're asking the questions about immigration, about the cultural wars, about, taxes, about inflation and whatever you can find. And we are experts about that in Estonia, because we have been living there then 10,000 years, and we will live another 10,000 years, but that Russia will and has been our neighbor, and so we see exactly what they're doing. I'm not talking about cyber attacks already anymore, because this is crazy. We had close to 12,000 really deep attacks during the last year. So this is normality for us. We're a digital country in the world, 100% of public services online. So, but and also the new technologies about social media, and normally you could trust the journalism, but journalism, traditional journalism, is as well in minority position in the meaning of spreading the information. So it is most important, we think, in Estonia, that our people are well educated. First thing. The second, we tell everything what we do, and we tell everything what is hybrid against us. We publish everything. And it's something that people cannot be afraid of. They need to know, and also we prepare them. And they must know what they should and must do. And this, I just give you a figure. We are asking every year the question from Estonian people with a survey. First thing, two things. Are you ready to fight if Russia is starting? Should Estonia fight if Russia is starting an aggression? There's more than 90% says yes. But even more important is the second question. Are you personally ready to participate? And this 74%. It's really high. Finland has the same figures. But many other countries, they don't have the same thing. And it's not like classical military aggression. It is about if we need to stand for our freedom and rights. And it takes time. So it's very important. But also these practical matters, what we need to take. Maybe I've just used this occasion. I'm going to introduce as well tomorrow for foreign minister. This that I asked the question from my government, and are we ready for peace? If the peace is coming, once it is coming, I do hope that just and lasting. Though we know exactly all the military stuff, we know how to give the security guarantees the other way around and so on, but this hybrid part. And Russia has now close to 1 million combatants actively against Ukraine, fighting there. And our intelligence says as well that the headache for Putin is what to do with these guys. These are crazy guys. They're ex-prisoners, rapists, and all these atrocities that they have committed. And he cannot keep them in Russia, because Russia is already in a very tense position under terror as a society. This is crazy. So probably he will send them out from Russia, and they will come mainly to Europe as in tourists or whoever. We already know that ex-Wagner is hiring people in Europe about committing different actions against us, and even terror attacks and so on. But then we will have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people coming in to these countries, even maybe to Australia, I don't know. So what we did, we just introduced, and now we're actually executing the action that we are listing. We are creating the blacklist of these combatants of Schengen. You know, Europe having this Schengen area, so they never can enter too. And we know the names, and we can do it. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands. And many, many, many countries now in Europe, they are connecting to us, and we are doing it all together. I cannot imagine how our governments can explain to European peoples and so on that we didn't do anything. We knew that what may happen. And we have experience as well from these kind of military conflicts that if ex-combatants of this organization members, they're coming to Europe, to Australia maybe as well. I'm not expert about that. But this is a totally different scale in the future. So it's not like classical security guarantees. We need to think as well about if the peace is coming, what actually will be the conditions to actually defend our security. It's not only the militaries.
Well, Minister, that's actually a pretty scary thought, I think, for people who have been in the national security community. I know that Sarah Goldsworthy is here, used to be a senior public servant in Australia relating to counter-terrorism. We know what happened with a number of foreign fighters in Syria and Iraq, then spreading throughout the world. If there are hundreds and thousands of Russian fighters the day after the war ends, as you say, we might have peace in terms of military conflict. Are we prepared for what comes next? It's a very important thought. Right, I'm sure there are, just in those few questions, the Minister has been extraordinarily open. He did set you the challenge of asking anything. So those of you with a question, please put up your hand. If you can tell the Minister who you are, which organisation you represent, that'd be great. And perhaps, Kay and Tim, we might take a couple at a time for the Minister.
Now it is working. Yeah.
Did
you hear me before? Without microphone.
Yeah. We've got one from the Lithuanian ambassador.
All right, sorry. Well, thank you, Mr. Minister. Well, allow me to ask the question. The relationship between the United States and Europeans and Australia is, first of all, through defense and security. Estonia and Lithuania are participants in the same transatlantic alliance. Indeed, the United States has long been paying 2/3 of defense spending. Europe paid only 1/3. These are objective figures. President Trump on numerous occasions mentioned that Europeans must increase their contribution to defense. But again, after living comfortably for a long time, especially in Western Europe and probably in Australia, it is quite difficult to pay for the security. Lithuania, as you mentioned, Latvia, Estonia, Poland, Finland understand what this means. Security is, first of all, our business, and we are spending around 5% of GDP, even without President Trump saying so. But other countries, they do think that devoting resources to defense would be a huge luxury. So, Mr. Minister, you travel a lot, meet with a number of important officials in different parts of the world, and allow me to ask, what is your expectation from Ankara NATO summit, which will take place in July, of course, about the further relations between the United States and Europe, and especially based on a financial contribution to defense? Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. The answer right now?
I think so.
Yeah. This 5% is a magic figure, and I'm really happy that last year in The Hague, the NATO summit, all the member states, they promised 5%, but 5% is actually not 5% of the defense spending. If we count in what is it, the Estonia is doing like maybe 8 to 9% right now, because there are like additional ones. We do 5.2% this year about pure defense spendings. But I'm very honest, we don't do it because of President Trump. I was defense minister when President Trump was first time in office, and I very clearly remember this NATO summit when we were very close actually to this momentum that US is actually going away from NATO. I suggest you, if you're not read yet this former Secretary General book about this. So, but why we decided like this is that actually we know what Russia can do. And also NATO has adopted in Vilnius summit, in the NATO summit 2 years ago, the new regional defense plans. And it is totally different concept. Now what we see, based on the Ukraine experience, is that if Russia is coming in, though it's really hard to fight back, it's really, really mostly impossible to gain the territories back. And if you're even gaining the territories back, there is no people left. And you can imagine, from this map, somewhere is Estonia, from the Russian border to the sea, we have 200 kilometers depth. Latvia the same, Lithuania is almost, but different. So we have no such a luxury. But now we have Finland and Sweden as well in the NATO. So the new concept is that if Russia is starting any kind of invasion, we bring the war to Russian territory. We'll hit deep the other side of Moscow. We actually destroy everything which is supporting this kind of aggression. And for that, we need to fulfill the gaps. And this is the NATO plan. It's not about Estonia only. And for that, you ask me what my expectations are for the next summit in Turkey, Ankara, is of course that everybody is assuring the 5% are really following. But this 5%, somebody has promised as well 2035. We are living in the year 2026. But even more important are actually the capability targets. You are familiar, what are these? These are actually the targets that member states has been promising to fulfill with a very precise criteria. So we are even much more interested about the real capabilities, about this process and this commitment. And I think that this is a honest and real picture. Maybe most of this information is classified publicly, but I think that we should actually face on that. And the second thing is that it's not only about Russia. It's about the situation in the world as well. And I'm really happy that NATO has this approach to this region as well, this strategic partnership with Australia and many other countries. So we need to have a wider plan. And that, based on this, I'm sure that US and Trump is committed to NATO. We witnessed that when we called in the Article 4 consultations last September, when 3 Russian fighter jets violated the Estonian airspace for 12 minutes. And also United Nations Security Council meeting, when US was very clear about that. And okay, it was one fragment, but I think this was exactly the language that Putin understands about red lines. That after the Security Council meeting, it happened the first day of UNGA week. All the world leaders were there, and there was a press conference with President Trump and President Zelensky. And President Trump was asked whether next time, if the Russian planes are coming into NATO, we should shoot them down. And Trump said very clearly, yes, we must. So I think this is the language that Putin understands, but also commitment. But as I said before, this commitment is not unconditional. We need to do our part. And actually, we need to do our part as Europe. So, and somehow I'm very solid with this pressure, maybe even the brutal language what Trump is using against European countries, because you said 2/3. I think that it was even more out of balance in real life. And, but I'm not a great fan of this idea that Europe should actually create their independent, totally independent defense capabilities. It's impossible in reality. And I think that US needs Europe as much as Europe needs US as well. We need to understand that. So this is my logic behind that.
Great. I think we'll a question over here and a couple of questions over here. We might take three together. I'll jot them down.
Yes, thank you, Your Excellency. There are reports that the Baltic states, as well as Poland and Finland, may be considering the use of anti-personnel mines along their eastern borders. How difficult is it for a country like Estonia to calculate which defensive weapons aid in security and which may risk further escalation?
You mean as a weapons or?
Well, defensive security measures, let's say.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which are effective and which are escalating?
Yeah.
Or?
How do you calculate that?
Okay. Answering now?
Sarah?
Yeah, Thank you, Minister. And I thought since I got that unsolicited shout out, I should ask a question. Sarah Goldsworthy from Coro. Minister, well, thank you also. The reflections on what to do with Russian fighters after the war is actually a very disturbing one. So thank you for the work that you're doing on leading on that. My question is around, you were talking about the work that Estonia did to remove China from its tech stack. And you also spoke about the Trump effect on Europe. I'd be interested in your reflections on the discussions in Europe at the moment around strategic decoupling from US technology and what your perspective is on that.
Thanks, Sarah. And Alex?
Alex Bristow from ASPI. I was going to ask about your view on Macron's plans for extended nuclear deterrence, but I think you may have covered your view on the assurances that the US already offers and that they remain strong. So I'll ask a different question, which was Australia's been a strong supporter of Ukraine throughout the war. It's given lethal assistance. It's given support in energy. It's deployed its military to train Ukrainians in the UK, as well as the Wedgetail aircraft has spent periods of time operating from Germany. What more would you like to see from Australia? And is there anything particular that you'd see Estonia doing with Australia? I know that Australia is part of the drone coalition with Latvia, for example.
Okay, escalation, decoupling, and what more from Australia?
Yes, I think that we need to just stick into our plans in real life and also be sure that we are able politically to back up the military capabilities. So we know based as well for Ukraine experience what we need to do if you're talking about the military capabilities. But the lack of that, the fear of escalation is based on the fear in our societies, and we are democratic countries, so the fear amongst the decision-making process and the decision makers and the heads of the states. And this is exactly that Russia is playing the cards. And if we are not really backing up these red line promises, then the miscalculation may come. And then I'm sure that our military people, they know exactly what to do. There is no question anymore then which is escalation or not, because we know who is escalating. But the main important is the process before that. You know, I was a defense minister 2016-17. We saw the other side of our border, 120,000 Russian troops ready to go within 48 hours. Classically, all the red flags were risen, you know, because the command line from Kremlin to the forces, it's very, very short. But we saw that there was no political willingness for that, but it could happen. We had no NATO troops located to our territories at the time. Now we have British, we have French, we have US, we have an air policing mission with all the different countries. We have NATO troops integrated to our troops. So the deterrence is that within the first minutes and hours, there will be dead soldiers from different countries all over the NATO. If Russia is starting that. So this is like the red lines, but Russia must be sure as well we are going to use it. It's not about nuclear escalation, because we believe that Russia never going to use nuclear weapon, even the tactical one, because militarily they are not gaining anything, but they're losing their political leverage. I think that even China, India, and all the other countries, they will, you know, withdraw from this. This is political suicide. So. That's the main thing about escalation, I think, not about this military. If the war is starting, we'll hit into the heart of Russia, because now then it is existential question for us, and there is no rules in the meaning of protecting ourselves. So EU, US, there is a lot of discussions about how to decouple, but I think that nobody is actually taking it seriously. So it's much more like domestic policy in some countries, that the elections are coming and you know, we know, but everybody understands this is impossible technically. There is no need for that. We just need to be stronger and united. And European Union on trade is very good. The Commission is able to make any kind of decisions about trade. I think that we saw it when the Greenland case was, when Trump, you know, said that he's not, how to say, he may use the military force again, as well against the Denmark, we can say, because Greenland is part of NATO as well. You know, Europe was really much united and ready to act as well with the tariff. If a couple of our member states were threatened with extra tariff because they were ready to support Greenland and Denmark, and Estonia was one of these countries. So reaction was very clear. Let's talk about it. So I think that Trump needs as well the strong partner in the meeting, and this is the understanding. But of course, if you're talking about technological autonomy, I think more and more Europe is thinking how can we increase these capabilities. If we're talking about the same thing as rare earth metals and minerals, actually Europe is the main market for that. We are very much depending on China. And so I see as well that Europe is now investing heavily to independent capabilities, but I think that without US, or Australia or Brazil or some other countries were not able actually to build up this need. So I think that the way should be, and actually is, for that during any kind of negotiations, Europe must have stronger position, as we have now. This is very fundamental, because, as I said before as well, and this is a fact, that US needs Europe as well as Europe needs US. It's the same thing. It's not, the main trade partner is actually European Union. So this is it. Just I'm mentioning this nuclear, the Macron concept or doctrine. It's very important that, and I think that it is not just because of elections. It's a real thing, and they have now new doctrine, and it must be additional to NATO. See, this is our. We have as well talks with France about that. But they cannot compete. So we have a nuclear doctrine, mainly based on US, UK, and then France as well is part of that, but independently. So if France is adding something, they need to work together. So this is our understanding, and we're welcoming this kind of initiatives anyways. So anything special, I'm not going to repeat everything what Australia is already doing, but maybe I'm highlighting this combatant thing is something new. It's not only about protecting Australian people, it's also the great message to Russian people that if you're going to participate actively in aggression as a soldier, though there is no way to travel you to Europe or to Australia, and the only place in Europe you can go is The Hague, the tribunal. So this is the only way, one-way ticket. Free, we can actually pay for that as well. So, but accountability is something which is out from the spotlight right now, because everybody's talking about the Middle East, everybody's talking about the peace talks and whatever, but accountability is something as well, my message here. And very practically, we are forming now the special tribunal for Russian aggression crimes. As you know, the aggression crimes are leadership crimes. So ICC is not covering that. ICC is covering different, the crimes against humanity and war crimes and everything else, but aggression crime is a leadership crime. We as a Western part, we were able to have once in the history this special tribunal. It was Nuremberg, and something happened as well in Japan, I think. I can't remember the name exactly. And this is very important for the future. It's not about Ukrainians only, it's about all of us. So under the European Council, now we have formed this initiative, and Estonia was the first country who actually ratified this agreement. And this tribunal will be in The Hague as well. And my ask and proposal as well is for Australian government to join that tribunal. And it's not only about Europe, because Australia is a leading country in the region. There can be many others who are following as well. So I think that this is a win-win-win, because Australia is following the same principles, the same values practically as well, and it can be one very, very important step towards accountability matters globally. So let's hope that this is one special thing what can happen.
Yeah. Thank you, Minister. I think we're at time, but I may have missed someone. Is someone got a final question for the Minister, or did we get everyone in that last group? I think that's it, Minister. You covered a lot in an hour. I think it is very compelling what you've had to say, and when you said at the beginning that you don't have secrets, I think you showed the power of a minister being transparent, going through what the reality of the challenges we face, so that we can actually then come together, as you say, unite, and come out better the other side, and unfortunately be prepared for what we might face in the future. I was interested in your one of your last answers, talking about your view that Russia wouldn't use nuclear weapons. I think there's no doubt that many countries and leaders around the world have been concerned and not acted out of fear of nuclear weapons use by Putin. So I think it's again a question of knowing what our red lines are and not fearing escalation when we need to respond. But you've been very open, very compelling. I hope your trip to Australia is a great one. I know you've got a series of important meetings with the Foreign Minister, government and politicians tomorrow before the long trip home. But your first official trip as Foreign Minister, I hope not your last. Please, everyone, join me in thanking the Minister for his time.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much. And also the final words. It's not like the high-level science what I'm telling, but I think that we cannot be afraid. This is the main thing. The fear is actually what is paralyzing us. And also that we are protecting what we have. It is a good thing that we are protecting what we have because our lifestyle is brilliant. You know, in Estonia as well, we have gained during the last 30 years of freedom a lot. We are living the best life ever our nation has been living, enjoying the freedom. But the case is that if you're in this like defensive position, you're going to lose. And if you're afraid, the bad guys are using your fear. And you know it very well. If you're walking down the crazy district and the first thing is the bad guys are coming, then actually if they see the fear, they will use it. So, and this is exactly what we need to understand. It's hard. And the leadership is important as well. It's not only about people. If you ask people, then of course they have different opportunities. But if the leadership is strong and and collaboration is strong, it's very important. So yes, thank you very much. Sorry, I hate these planes, but I need to fly, and I'm flying longer than actually I'm here.
It's a problem as the Foreign
Yes,
Minister hating
I'm
planes.
flying back home for 24 hours, then I'm going to Brussels and then to Israel. So. In the middle of everything. So it's important to be there and also ask the question why things are like this. So, but thank you very much, and I hope to see you in Estonia.
Thank you, Minister.